All right, we are live, and the Devils are going for 13 in a row. This is kind of insane what's been happening in New Jersey. If you haven't been paying attention, they are a wagon. It's not luck. They're not being floated by an incredible goaltender. Vanacek's playing well, but they're doing it with team defense. Overall, like team speed, they're just very quick to lose pucks. They're shutting down the Oilers right now. Jesper Bratt, power play goal. Mercer had a goal. Severson with a beautiful rush chance from Hughes and Bratt. I mean, this team is on fire. And on top of all this, they're playing incredibly well. They're also one of the youngest teams in the league, and they're doing this without Nemec in the lineup, and they still have Luke Hughes coming. So this is terrifying for anybody who's in their division, which I'm a Rangers fan, and we are in their division, and we play them soon. I don't know the exact schedule, but we have them like any day now. I think it's next week. Could be mistaken, but just wanted to jump on here and start answering some questions. Hopefully this live stream is working. Let me just double check that it is before we continue. I usually open up a different window and just see. Yeah, looks like we're on. 3 people have joined, but I know a bunch of you will start from the beginning at a later date. So one question that I've been getting a lot, and this kind of goes with the video that I uploaded today, is what do you do about Victor Hedman? If you're a Hedman owner, he's more than likely your D1 right now, and I don't want to say he's playing poorly. If you check, let's go to Yahoo and just look at where he is standings wise. I believe he's in like the hundreds. I don't think he's that far down. But obviously, yeah, he's 131. So he's not terrible, but he's not doing what you want him to do. But I mean, the ice time's there. He kind of got taken off the power play a little bit, but that was mainly because of Sergachev and how well Sergachev is playing. If you haven't noticed, Tampa Bay is not the same team that they used to be. I think losing McDonough factors into that a little bit. But nonetheless, I do think that he's still worth keeping on your roster. There's no reason to drop him at all. You can't drop him if you're, drafted him in the first round or whatever. But you probably won't find a trade for him either, because he's a unicorn. He's a 6'6" defenseman who plays power play, penalty kill, all situations. And he's supposed to cover a lot. If you look at the shots, hits, and blocks, he does a little bit of everything, just not quite enough right now compared to what he's used to doing. But, I mean, there's nothing. I'm looking at some of his advanced stats right now. Only 1.9 expected goals, and he's only got 1 goal on the year. So he's, right where he should be in terms of that. But normally he would be a little bit higher than that just because of, last year he was 5.3 above expected in terms of goals. He's not necessarily a goal scorer, but assists per 60, he's right where he used to be. So he's 1.21 assists per 60 minutes right now. Last year he was 1.9. But this is a case of, his points per 60 actually is a little bit lower. So points per 60, 2.48 last year, 1.36 this year, and his shooting percentage is only 2.8%. So he is underperforming, but there's really nothing you can do about it. You're not going to get a trade offer for a number 1 defenseman unless it's somebody like Erik Karlsson. And I was all over Erik Karlsson in the preseason, but at the same time, I don't think that you should trade Hedman for Karlsson. Karlsson is 1 injury away from becoming irrelevant again, and it's tough to hear if you're a Karlsson owner, which is why you may want to sell high if you don't necessarily believe in it right now. But this is one of the things that you have to kind of navigate and deal with. This is why I say you need 2 elite defensemen, because if you have this guy and he's your only one, you're struggling. If you look at my team, I'll pull them up because we've already gone through this. So I have Ekblad and Karlsson, who are my first 2 D. Both of them were out for the last couple of weeks. Ekblad missed a bunch of time. I did a video on that. McAvoy has been out the whole season until recently. So I had none of these guys. I had Werenski. I was streaming Gostisbehere and Gudis and whoever else I could throw into the lineup. and just kind of getting by until this point in the season. So, this is why you need 2 elite defensemen, because if one of them is underperforming, you can rely on the other one for a little bit to boost your offensive categories in the meantime. But, this is a very difficult situation. He's not terrible. I mean, again, if you look at some of the other defensemen, let's just look at just D, and we'll look at all players. Obviously, there's some names at the top of this list that you're not used to seeing here. Dahlin at number 1 is not normal. Makar, Yossi, they are normal. Petrangelo's having a great year, so everybody in Vegas is having a great year. Sergachev is usually more of a hits and blocks guy. If you can see 45 blocks, he's got the shot volume, the hits, but he's also racking up the points this year because he's got an elevated role. And this is what happened with the trade of Ryan McDonough. And I knew that he was going to get that, third defenseman role, because, he's not going to play with Hedman, so he's going to play on the second pair and get a lot more minutes. And I did pick him up in one of my teams, but not every team. But, some of these guys are not used to being here. Brendan Montour, not necessarily supposed to be up this high. Hampus Lindholm having a great year. Sider's slowly starting to creep back into contention here. Just picked up a goal, adding a couple assists, and still covering all the other categories. Justin Falk, he's typically a goal scorer. Brent Burns is up there a little bit, but some of these guys are not going to be ahead of a guy like Hedman for that long. So I would just wait, hold on, and just try to stream another defenseman for the time being and figure it out that way. I don't want to add it to the queue. I want to check out the chat. I don't know if I have to play this. It's going to come up here. So we got a couple people here slowly filtering in. Added Robert Thomas on St. Louis for the comeback train. Thoughts? I like it because he's in my league too. If you look at St. Louis players, there's a lot of guys are owned up at this point. We don't want just D. We want all players. But in terms of Kairu's coming back. He's playing a little bit better now. He's owned up, 72%, pretty high. Tarasenko's pretty high. Achari's kind of, coming out of nowhere. It's all hits. I mean, he's just hitting everything that moves. But Robert Thomas is coming too. So 15 points, getting some shots, just does nothing else. That's the only problem. And he's single position eligible, so that's the only other problem. A guy like Barbashev is a little bit, less reliable in terms of point production, gets a little bit more category coverage and dual position eligible. So if that's what you need, then you could go that route. But Thomas is a good route to go as well, mainly for assists and power play. But if you look at power play, a bunch of guys are tied with 4 power play points, and he's one of them. So him and Kairu, Torrey Krug, Buchnevich, Braden Shen is up there, and Shen gets some hits as well as some shots. Kairu's a shot volume guy for sure. So there's a little bit of everything to grab in St. Louis. Even Ryan O'Reilly, a lot of this is baking in like he just wasn't good until recently. So a lot of zeros, and then finally he started to pick up the offensive production. So they're coming. The St. Louis Blues, Nashville Predators, I think Pittsburgh's coming. But we'll just have to wait and see. Adam Ruzicka, thoughts? Line dependent. If you're gonna stream him, that's fine. If you're gonna try to rely on him for an extended period of time, I think you're trying to pick him up for the wrong reason. I think he's line dependent, and as long as Huberdeau and guys like that are struggling, I mean, Daryl Sutter, I was watching somebody today on YouTube talk about how like Trevor Lewis is up in the lineup, Milan Lucic is playing second line, and like he didn't understand at all what's going on in Daryl Sutter's head, and that's probably why Ruzicka's getting a chance there. Just for fun, let's look at Ruzicka's stats. So that's, 8 points, and he just started playing not that long ago. So he's still getting it done if you still want to stream him. But I just wouldn't necessarily bank on him year-round or for any extended period of time. The shot volume isn't crazy. One shot, one. Typically, if you're getting point production, that's fine. I'll deal with the stream if he's getting points and whatnot, but not shots or anything else. But a guy like I just mentioned, Owen Tippett, he would be a better, not long-term play, but longer-term play because of his shot volume. If you look at the shots, he's getting at least 3 shots almost every game. And that makes him ownable as you wait for the production to come. And it's come, over the past couple of weeks here. He started to chip in a bunch of goals, a couple assists. Not doing a ton on the power play, but getting a couple here and there. So Ruzicka, line dependent. I wouldn't hold on to him for too long. Andrew says, I have both Hughes acquired in a trade and Hischier. Should I try to get another defenseman? Playing in a points league. Burns, Montour, and Hronik. I would look to sell high on Hronik. He had a great week, and if I remember correct, he was a shot volume guy. Let me just double check that. He's a .48 point per game guy. Not a lot of goal totals. Nah, not really a shot guy either. Yeah, I would sell high on Hronik and try to parlay that into a more reliable defenseman if you can. Sell high on Hischier maybe, but there are a few good D-men available. Morrissey, Hronik, Addison. Don't make that move. If you want to sell high on Hischier, that's fine because his value's through the roof right now. And the thing about guys like Hischier, guys like Carlson, is there is injury risk. So you're running the risk of, if one bad play and you could be down your top center. But I wouldn't do it for any of those 3D. 102 overall. 3 assists tonight. I mean, he's doing everything. And especially if you're in a face-off league. I have him in a face-off league just to show you guys what that looks like. Let's see if I can switch over to the different leagues. No, this is the one league. Got to go over here. So this is my face-off league. And Bergeron is the best player in the league. He just racks up the face-off wins. But Hischier just racks up the points too, because he got 8 face-off wins so far, 3 assists, +1 power play assist. And if you just look at his game log every game, I mean, look at this, 40 points in a 2-goal game with a bunch of face-off wins. So if you're in a face-off league, you definitely want to hold on to him. If not, then injury risk is a thing, but you're also going to want to get a better quality defenseman than one of those guys. Morrissey's okay. Hronik, I don't know if I'd hold on to him for that long, and Addison's kind of fall off a cliff in the last couple weeks here. Do I think Dahlin and Tage Thompson can keep up their production on a team like Buffalo? I do. So I was looking back at the overdraft candidates video because I was just checking a couple things for today's video, and in that, Tage Thompson was a huge, not necessarily overdraft candidate, but he outperformed his 5-year average by 0.46 points per game. But his 5-year average was a lot of incomplete seasons and seasons where he was coming up into what he is now. So I would kind of, at this point, you've seen it for a year and a half, sort of, at least half of last year and half of this year. So I would definitely think that Tage Thompson can continue. And the thing about Thompson is his shot volume. So if you look at Thompson, I mentioned a couple days ago he was at 3.75 shots per game. He's probably right in that range again. And if you look at the log, I mean, 9 shots on goal. So that's what you're talking about, in terms of a floor. You get no points that night, but you get 9 shots. That's incredible. And then 6, 6, 4, 8, 4, 3. I mean, he's just a machine shooting the puck. So, yeah, I think it is sustainable. His shooting percentage isn't too high, and he's the number 1 center. He's getting all the power play looks. He's getting all the top minutes. He's playing 22 minutes a night in the last couple games, trying to get him out of this winless streak. So I think that can continue. And Dahlin is the same type of thing. He's been coming for a little bit as well, and now we're starting to see it in terms of both the production and the fantasy value as well. He was, holding up his value. I believe if I remember correct, he was right around this range pre-rank last year and then ended up in that 80 to 100 range at the end of the year. So he kind of held his value. This year he's jumped in value by a lot. So maybe he regresses back to this like 81 to 100 range. But even then you're going to want to keep him for that purpose because you're not going to find anything better. What would you do? Would you parlay that into trying to lowball a guy for Hedman? I mean, I don't even know if that's going to be a longer term play that would work. So I do think both of these guys can keep it going. What do you think about my goalies? I got Jarry, Binnington, and Kemper. You should be fine. It hasn't been working late. In the beginning of the season, Jarry and Binnington were terrible. Binnington's coming around. Jarry's coming around. He just got a shutout. And then Kemper, a bunch of people started messaging me about Kemper for the video I just did today. I don't see him being that bad. Like, he's not, and I was talking about this in the preseason as I try to pull up his file. You don't want goalies that are in the first year with a new team. But with that said, he had really good save percentage and goals against last year. And he was I did a whole video on how he was kind of floating Colorado last year. They were giving up a bunch of chances, and he was the one cleaning it up. So he gets pulled in this game. That destroys his numbers. But, gets a shutout. That kind of balances things out. It's just a matter of them getting healthy. I don't think Washington's been fully healthy at all this year. They're still waiting on Tom Wilson. They're not going to get Nick Backstrom back. They were waiting on John Carlson to come back, and that's a huge part of this, is he was missing his number one defenseman for a key chunk of the season. So now that they're starting to get a little bit healthier, I would expect them to start. They're a veteran team. They're always in the playoffs. I'm pretty sure that they've made the playoffs like 14 of the last 15 seasons. I could be wrong on that, but they know how to get it done. And if they haven't been playing to their best yet, it'll come. I wouldn't panic. And a 907, there's nothing wrong with that. Obviously, you'd like to avoid those starts where he gives up, 4 goals on 9 shots and gets pulled, but that's pretty rare. I don't think that's, going to continue happening. Tage will slightly regress, but I still think he can hit 88 points. I do too. Thoughts on flipping Svechnikov? So Svech, as I'm doing the 5-year averages preseason, he doesn't have a crazy average because he's still coming up in the league. And his main party piece typically is the fact that he hits too. So now he's starting to put it together where he can, have a good week where he's first star in the week. He's got 12 goals on the year, still getting the hits, adding a bunch of shot volume and some power play production. And there's not a lot to go on in Carolina. They're not a bad offensive team, but they're not, Sebastian Aho is a quintessential exact point per game player, and everybody else is below him in terms of point production. So with Svechnikov, I would see him as maybe a point per game guy, but a guy who will get you a ton of shots and hits. So I would probably stick with it. I mean, if you're getting, this shot volume, it's not Tage Thompson, but it's pretty good. And then the hits, I mean, you're not getting, crazy hit volume, but for a guy that's, putting up these kind of offensive numbers, to have him throw 3 hits a game every now and then, that's, what else are you going to try to buy if you're going to trade him? I lost it. I have a triple stack of McAvoy, Pasta, and Marchand. Should I keep all or not? I would, because, it does hurt you in terms of playing the schedule and stuff like that, but those are the 3 guys that you would want to have. I have 2 of those 3 on my main team. I got McAvoy and Pasternak. I would probably keep all of those guys. It doesn't hurt you unless you notice it's starting to hurt you schedule-wise. If you had, last year, if you had Kemper, Rantanen, Makar, I had Rantanen and Makar last year, and I would sometimes stream a guy here and there, and it didn't hurt. It actually helps because you're picking from one of the best teams in the league, and right now, Boston's a wagon, so you got to kind of roll with it. I meant on the waiver wire on the Heischer comment. I wouldn't drop him to waivers. Look at this guy. What's the score now? 4-2. And he picked up another one, another assist. Yeah, don't drop him to the wire. Vitek Vanacek for Rasmus Dahlin. If you're getting Dahlin, I see it's tough because Vanacek isn't playing. You have Ottinger and Hellebuck. You could do it, yeah. You could do that. It's I mean, the thing right now is that Vanacek is playing for one of the best defensive teams, not one of the best, the best defensive team in the league. So, as I'm pulling up the team stats right now, they're number one in expected goal percentage. They're number one in goals against. They're doing everything. They're limiting high danger chances. So, I would want to keep Vanacek for that. Mainly because he's going to just keep chipping away wins, and he's not going to give up a ton of. He's not going to have that bad night, I don't think. I mean, he might have a bad night here and there, but it's not going to be a night where he gets shelled for 5 goals on 9 shots or whatever. But to get Dahlin, I could see it, and with those 2 other goalies, it does make some sense. I'm getting a ton of messages for some stupid reason. Just got to silence this. It's my Devils fans. They're hitting me up. Thoughts on Kirby Dach? Do you think he can keep up his production? No. But I do like the line assignment for him right now. So if you have him, I'd hold on to him for a little bit until he loses this assignment. But the thing about him is, a couple years ago, he did have a pretty decent season with Chicago. And you started to see some of what you're seeing now. And the problem is we don't have a ton of data on him. That 1 year I'm talking about, he was a .55 point per game guy. So even if he exceeds that this year and is a .75 point per game guy, that still may not be worth holding on to him the whole season. But for right now, you probably do want him because he's playing with Suzuki and Caulfield, and they are guys that you want to keep on your roster for the whole season. Trying to sell high on Hronik, so I'm there with you. Definitely tough to find people willing to let go of their defensemen, though. Some people just don't pay attention to trades all that often. It's what it is. Some guy's been trying to, get Claude Giroux off of me in my face-off league for weeks, and I just won't do it because he's a center right winger, and I need those. Thinking of selling high on DeBrusk. Is Robert Thomas a good candidate to go for? Yes and no. Yes, I think Thomas might put up more points than DeBrusk, but DeBrusk has been killing it with shots right now. So I'm actually streaming DeBrusk right now. Although I was watching the game, he just literally he ran into Pasternak, but he almost knocked himself out. It looked really, really dumb. But if you look at his shot volume, 6, 6, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 2, 5. He's still putting up, 2 assists tonight, so I'm glad I streamed him for tonight. 3-game point streak. He's still getting it done. I don't know if I would go that route yet. Thomas had a better season last year, but I think Jake DeBrusk, without Bruce Cassidy as the coach, I think he's kind of coming into his own right now, so it might be worth just holding on to him. And again, Boston's a wagon, so you might want to just have exposure to their top line, which I believe he's still playing on. Thoughts on Bjorkstrand? Shot volume is insane, but he has 0 production this season. Yeah, that's been the problem with him. And I streamed him early in the season for the shots, and he's still putting them up. The goals aren't there. Let me look at his goals above expected and his shooting percentage. And if you're wondering, I'm just using Money Puck for this because it's readily available. Actually, I'll move it over. We'll pull it up here. So his expected goals is 4.9, and he's only got 1. So it should be coming for Bjorkstrand. Goals above expected, minus 3.9. And typically he's well above expected because of how good he is shooting the puck. So, and his shooting percentage, 1.8%. That cannot sustain itself. So if you look 13, 12, 13, that's where he should be. So it might be a good buy low on Bjorkstrand right now. He's probably on your waiver wire. 16% owned. So yeah, he's probably there for you. The only thing is he's only a right wing, but in terms of Seattle, I watched them. I mean, I watched the Rangers play them the other night, and they're a very good defensive structured team. They need some offense, and he's a guy that can do that. He's just a little bit snake bitten right now. So I would definitely look to him to start scoring any day now, because typically, I mean, I've been showing it to you guys in real time. Guys at the bottom of the expected goal differential, they start climbing, at some point. Kyle Connor was at the bottom of the list. He started climbing. Before that, it was Chris Kreider. He started climbing. These guys don't stay that cold for that long. So I would probably look to get out in front of it because he's still a quality shooter and he's getting an opportunity. Should you sell high on Kirby Dach? Probably, if you can, depending on what you need. And depending on if it's in the data draft league. You're struggling in the data draft league, Jared. If you can get a Tarasenko or Kyrou, I would sell on Kirby. Yeah, I would too. Kyrou's coming along, so that would be a decent option right there. I held on to Raquel over Buchnevich in a points league. Did I make a massive mistake? Yes. I've never been a Raquel guy. He just never does it. He's been getting the shot volume this year, as you can see, 58 shots, and he's actually playing pretty well. I mean, that's not bad. Goal and an assist last game, and he's getting an opportunity. But as we pull up his historical numbers, 28 points in 51, 13 and 19 is not bad. 28 in 52, 42 and 65. I mean, these aren't great numbers. They're not, typically in fantasy, and I was harping on this all throughout the preseason, you want a guy who's at least around a point per game, because that means they're doing something for your team every night. And he's not really close to that most seasons. Now, the closest he came, 69 points in 77 games, and that was 5-6 years ago at this point. So he's getting an opportunity. He's actually producing pretty well. He's a plus player finally, and the shots are there. So it's not necessarily a bad move that you kept him, but let's take a look at Buchnevich, because he started to go off, and obviously he was come on, just autofill. He was ice cold, Buchnevich, and look at all these zeros. So it's hard for me to say that you made the wrong call just looking at this, but I think going forward, Buchnevich is going to have a bit more of an opportunity to succeed. As I mentioned in the video today, St. Louis was third best in goals for last year. They're 25th now, so I would expect it to regress upward, and their offense is going to start scoring, and it's started already. So 2 goals, 2 assists, a power play point, 3 shots for Buchnevich. And Anaheim gets your offense going, as Mark was telling us in the Data Draft Discord group. He's a Ducks fan, and he knows, like, every time the Ducks play somebody who hasn't scored in a month just breaks out, and Buchnevich did that against them. Picked up Natchez as a free agent weeks ago and just traded him for Huberdeau. Thoughts? Normally, that makes a lot of sense. A guy off a free agent or off waivers or whatever, and then you trade him for a guy who was a first-round pick. Normally, that does make sense. And as I mentioned in the video today, just pull it up maybe. So last year, he was way above his 5-year average. His 5-year average is 1.12 points per game, which is really good. This year, he's way below. So I would imagine that his point per game numbers start to increase. That'll mainly be in assists, and it should come in power play assists. So it could actually work out for you. But I don't necessarily see him having a career year this year, and Natchez might actually outscore him at the end of the season. So it's tough to say, but it's the right thought process if it wasn't the right move. Which of these D would you consider making a trade for? Dobson, Pietrangelo, Lindholm, Heiskanen, Morrissey, Hughes, Barry, Falk. Of those guys, I mean, Hughes is all assists, so that's the only problem with him. Barry gets you power play exposure to Edmonton, but that's about it. Falk gets you goals, but I don't know if his ceiling is that high. Pietrangelo, as we just saw in, we'll just do it again. With the D, he's way up here on this defenseman list. He's the 5th best defenseman right now. I don't see that continuing, but at the same token, like, he's playing incredible. So even if he's marginal, you know, he may not be, you know, 29 rank at the end of the season, but even if he's, you know, in the top 100, that's probably a decent trade target. Dobson, I mean, he's another guy who's getting it done a little bit further down on this list, but still, the power play production, a nice even split of goals and assists, some shot volume, and some blocks as well. It kind of depends on what you need. I mean, if you want, I mean, because Quinn Hughes is not going to get you hits and blocks or goals or even a ton of shots. So I wouldn't necessarily recommend that. But if you need power play and assists, then maybe go Quinn Hughes. But some of these guys, they're kind of one-trick ponies, and other guys are a little bit more well-rounded. So it depends on what you need in terms of your category coverage, if it's a points league or whatever. And I'm sure you're going to comment further down, and I'll have to come back to it. But, I mean, Dobson, Pietrangelo, those would be nice targets. Lindholm, I could see staying pretty relevant for the rest of the year. I just don't know if that's the safest bet because of McAvoy being back. Heiskanen should be playing better than he is by all accounts, because he's obviously the power play guy in Dallas right now. But 155 rank, 12 points. It could be a buy low for Heiskanen. Very assist heavy over the last couple weeks. I mean, he's a guy that I was targeting in the preseason, but he just hasn't taken that next step. He's playing fine. He's playing pretty well, but we kind of expect him to play like Dahlin is right now, and he's not. I watched your latest video. I have Huberdeau. Do you think I should try and trade him when he has a better week, like you said, or just hold on to him since I'm currently 5-1 and in first place? If you, I don't know where he is in your league, but maybe take a look at Pacioretty and hold on to Huberdeau until Pacioretty gets back, and then make a decision. Because, I mean, I guess if you're looking for Huberdeau, like if you got Huberdeau specifically for assists and points, then that's not going to help you getting Pacioretty. But if you look at it, I mean, Pacioretty's going to get you more shots and goals, and probably some power play as well. And he's probably easily available on the wire. And I don't know if you're going to be able to trade Huberdeau for anything that's worth Huberdeau. Like, you're not going to get a guy who's a first or second round pick from an ice cold Huberdeau. So, maybe just see what other kind of creative options are out there. Duclair's on the IR. Ehlers is on the IR. There's a couple of guys like that I'm kind of keeping an eye on. I have a couple of them stashed already. I have Pacioretty and Ehlers stashed. Line A is stashed on IR on my team as well. You can maybe try to make a trade there. But again, I would wait for Huberdeau to pop off a little bit. You don't want to trade him right now. Night. Thoughts on Jason Zucker, points league, thinking of selling high? I would sell high. Let me just look at his averages, because I've never seen him. He does hit, and that's the one thing about Zucker that kind of makes him stand out a little bit from other guys like Rust in Pittsburgh. But his career, his past 5-year point per game high was a .78, and that was 5 years ago. And in that season, he hit 33 goals in 82 games. So that would be his ceiling. And he's playing well above that right now. So let's just look at Zucker. Just look at his season total so I can get a little bit more of a grasp of his per game numbers. So yeah, he's close to a point per game, .88. So he will regress a little bit. It's just a matter of, he's getting a couple of shots, but the hits volume is what you're looking at. 44 hits. And in some of these seasons, he's been injured. So that's the other thing. He's finally healthy, so he's able to hit a little bit more. And that does help his value. As you can see, he's putting up some hits almost every game, getting some shots too, and the production's been there. Yeah, it could be a good sell high time though, because he's never been that guy that keeps it going for the whole year. Watched your video earlier today and saw Kane on that list, then got a trade offer for Pat Kane for Pietrangelo. 14-person points league. It makes sense. It's just, how are you doing in your league? If you can kind of hold out for a couple more weeks, like if you're in first place right now, I wouldn't make that move. If you're desperate for points right now, maybe you have to try to get into the mix. But again, I don't like trading out of desperation, and it depends on, Pat Kane was probably a 3rd or 4th round pick. Petrangelo's a little bit later, maybe, 6th to 10th round range for Pietrangelo. So you're kind of going backwards that way. 14-person league means it is tough to find some offense on the waiver wire. It is tough. That's a tough call. I guess if you want more clarity, send me your point weighting and how you're doing in the league, and we'll come back to it. I've got McAvoy, Marchand, Pasternak, and DeBrusk. Should I look to trade off one of them or hold on since Boston's on fire? I would trade DeBrusk out of all those guys because, the shot volume's great. I like it, and I've been talking, nice things about DeBrusk on the stream. It's just if you've got the other 3 guys that are playing arguably better than DeBrusk, and 2 of them, these guys are in the top 6, and then McAvoy's your power play quarterback defenseman, if you could parlay DeBrusk into a different shot volume guy, let's see who you could maybe target. Again, if you're in a points league where shots aren't the craziest thing to have, then maybe you don't care about shots and you just go for points. But if you are trying to replace the shots, most of these guys are not getting traded anytime soon. Brent Burns up there with the big boys, though. Not that you need a defenseman necessarily, but yeah, I don't know. I would look for a points guy at that point. Something else, goals, assists, something else, because you're not going to get a different shot guy. Maybe, nobody will do that. Page 2. This is where DeBrusk is. Svech, you're probably not getting Svech. You probably don't want Vetrano or Hyman or Toffoli. Maybe if you could get a low ball, DeBrusk for Connor, that would definitely work for me if I'm in your shoes. Other than that, none of these guys are crazy important. Maybe a Carter Verhaeghe, but you'd be buying at his peak right now. He's been getting a ton of shot volume. But he would be the guy to trade of those 4. And I think you should probably try to target one of those guys. Who would you keep between Jeremy Swayman or Aiden Hill? Aiden Hill's on fire right now. So it is tough. Let's compare. So Swayman, I like because Boston is a wagon, and they're also very good defensively. But so is Vegas. So it's basically like the same type of thing because they're both 1Bs, and they're both playing for great defensive teams, and the stats are pretty much the same. Obviously, he's going to have more. Is that Swayman? It's saying he's going to have more saves, like a lot more saves. I guess they don't think Adin Hill's going to be playing that much longer because the saves are crazy there. But honestly, they're very similar players, and both teams are playing well. Like I don't know how you would drop either of them, but you have Ottinger and Vanacek, so that's why. So I would kind of hold on to both of them because you're not going to get a ton of starts right now, and just wait and see because maybe Ottinger was hurt for a little bit. Maybe you just hold on to 4 and wait and see if any of these guys end up on IR or going down with any kind of injury, and you can kind of slide them into your lineup as you need it. But it's tough between those two guys because they're pretty similar. I normally before the season would have said Swayman, but Adin Hill's having a great year. 12-man points league, so I can look at a player with similar points too. Yeah, that's probably the right way to go. All right, guys. I mean, this is a first. I've never reached the end of the chat, so we clearly don't have a ton of people in the chat right now. People are probably watching Monday Night Football, which is what I'm going to go do. My whole week comes down to Deebo Samuel versus DeAndre Hopkins, and I haven't watched. I don't even know if D-Hop's doing anything right now. But this is what happens when you make a slight mistake earlier in the week. Yeah, he's playing. He's seven catches, 77 yards. So that's what I'm going to go do. So thank you guys for joining me on the live stream. Chris just popped in. You have Carlson. Would you keep or hold? I would keep him except the injury risk. So you're one injury away from destroying his value. And he's pretty fragile. And you're never going to find a better time to trade him than right now. If you need something else, then sell. If you don't mind the injury risk, then keep him. Like if you've got 2 or 3 other elite defensemen, then maybe hold on to him. If you don't, then try to parlay that. I kind of was talking about this earlier in the stream, but I mean, maybe for you, it might make sense to go Carlson and try to grab Victor Hedman, because somebody who owns Hedman might be panicking. And then you're kind of, Hedman doesn't really get hurt all that often. So you'd be kind of getting rid of that injury risk. You would also be losing a ton of production this year because Carlson's amazing, but that's your main concern owning Carlson right now. And, I was in on Carlson at the beginning of the year, but I was not expecting him to play this well. Just want to quickly look him up before we end it. 11 and 17 is just nuts. And he's the 16th best player in fantasy right now. And he's still, a 4-point night against Detroit. He's doing everything, and he's getting like game winners too. If you're in points leagues with game winners and stuff like that, so that you got to factor that in too. But at the same time, like he's not going to be like, I cannot imagine him outperforming Cale Makar the whole season. So if you can, you could probably try to sell high on him, and now would be the time to sell high. Do I think Backstrom will be back by the end of the season? I haven't heard that, and I've kind of heard things similar to like Carey Price, where his career may or may not be over. But I'm not 100% sure on that. It does suck though, because he was he was an assist-heavy power play guy for most of his fantasy career, but they do kind of need him there. Pat Kane for Petrangelo again. Shots, hits, blocks, 1.5 goals. Shots are 1.5. Goals are 6. Assists are 5. That's a lot. that's a lot of points for goals and assists, and maybe seeing as how I just did an entire video on like buying low on Patrick Kane, I think if you make that deal, you're going to live to regret it. I don't think it's a bad deal right now, but I think if you do it, Kane is going to go off and you're going to be pissed off that you made the deal. And that's something that I kind of factor into some of my decision making. Like, if I make this move and he goes off, how am I going to feel about it? Because that happened to me with a number of guys in the past. And I keep talking about Demko, but he burned me last year because I dropped him. It's my fault. So, yeah. If you're worried about Patrick Kane going off after he gets traded, then maybe, hold on to him. It is a really tough call. It's I'd have to kind of look at your whole team, and even then, it's still who else are your defensemen? I was gonna type, but like obviously you can hear me. Let's check the Devils score one more time. Did they? Yeah, that's a final 5-2. They're on a 13-game winning streak for the Devils. Sharon Govich. There's Zetterlund. We were pimping him on the, was it week 5? Tatar and Zetterlund playing in the top 6. Zetterlund is a shot volume guy. The raw numbers don't look crazy good, but the shot volume's there pretty much every game. 3-game point streak. He's not the best option, but if you're in a deep, deep league, Fabian Zetterlund doing some work. But the Devils are killing it right now. Dawson Mercer, Heischer, Tatar. You want exposure to Devils offense right now. Devils defense, Devils goaltending, anything Devils right now. I bet against him 3 games ago, hoping the streak would end, and it did not pay off well. Crazy. Absolutely crazy. Calgary beats Philly 5-2. That's pretty... if Markstrom's in net, that's a pretty big win for Markstrom. And we were just talking about him in the video today. Huberdeau gets on the board. He saw his thumbnail right before the game, and he's like, F this data draft guy, I want to score. And he doesn't normally score goals, so good on him. And it was Markstrom, 920 save percentage. So it's good to have patience in fantasy, guys. I'm in a points league that counts everything besides hits. Would you trade Hintz and McAvoy for Barkov and Hedman? No. Seems like a lateral move. Actually, I mean, if you're not counting hits, and if, I'm guessing you also don't count blocks, then McAvoy becomes a lot less valuable. Hintz is killing it right now. Barkov isn't playing terribly. I've been getting a lot of questions about him. You could do that. Counts everything besides hits. Yeah. Hedman's playing fine. Barkov is all right. I mean, let me just double check on Barkov. 76. He's getting a lot of shots, and you don't care about the hits column, and he's getting some points. Yeah, I mean, if you want to float that out there, and if the guy takes it, it's not going to, I don't think it's going to bite you in the ass. I have Campbell, Murray, and Swayman. Should I hold them all for now? Ooh, man. That 3 goaltending rotation is going to give you diabetes or a heart attack or something. I can't. I mean, it's tough because Campbell's so bad that they can't even put him in the net. I have him in a points league, and the only reason I do is because he gets wins every now and then. So if that's the case, then you got to hold on to Campbell. Murray's been playing well, but he gives you a heart attack every game. And then Swayman is probably your most consistent, so I would definitely hold him. If you can find an upgrade on Campbell, maybe try to do that, but at least you have 2 goalies on good defensive teams there. So Cal says also have Petrie, Shabbat, Faravari, and Dursey. If those are your D, I would definitely make the move for Pietrangelo because you need a number 1 D. Shabbat's out. Petrie's, I mean, he's playing all right, but Faravari's a hits guy. Dursey's a waiver pickup. So if you can go out and trade a slumping Patrick Kane for a number 1 defenseman, that might be the play. We do count blocks, just no hits if that changes anything. It kind of does a little bit because McAvoy does get blocks. And obviously these numbers aren't going to look great because he just came back, but he's only been held scoreless once. That's pretty impressive. And the hits are kind of hit or miss. I don't know. It might be the right year to hold on to Charlie McAvoy. I've been seeing his name, I mean, very early popping up in terms of like Norris discussion, but Hedman's always in that discussion. So it's like, you know, do you want a safer option who's just playing a little bit below what he should be, or do you want a guy like McAvoy who is playing extremely well? To me, it just feels like a lateral move. You're not gaining anything. You're just sort of like taking you're taking a center that's playing well and trading him for a center that's playing well. You're taking a defenseman that's playing well and trading him for a defenseman who should be playing better. And at the end of the day, like, should be higher up, but it's not addressing a team need or solving a problem for your team. So I wouldn't do it. And that, I mentioned that in the trade video, is like, when you're making a trade, it has to solve a problem for you. It has to fix something. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. And if it is broke, then you need to fix it. But unless you have a problem that solves, then I don't know why. It is somewhat of a lateral move. But on that note, with the Devils going for 13, just going to move this over so you guys can take one last look at Jesper Bratt, who is absolutely on fire right now. And we will call it a day. Thank you guys for tuning in. Hopefully I answered your questions. I know I was a little like dancing around that last one because it is kind of a lateral move, and it's tough to, you know, if it's not clear and obvious. As you've been seeing in some of my videos, like the trades that I've been making are very obvious. Like, you got to make those trades, but these ones are kind of a little bit murkier. But thank you guys for hanging out with me. I'll be doing these live streams typically on nights, maybe Sundays and Mondays, when there might actually be some people in here, but it's been a little slow today. So hopefully if you're replaying this and watching it back, leave me a note in the comments below when you'd like to see me live stream. I can like kind of tailor this to you guys and help you guys out a little bit more. But thank you again for watching, and I'm just going to try to quickly figure out how to stop the stream.